Alright, let's get some things out of the way right now. 1. This entire video will contain major spoilers for Lightyear. If you have not seen it yet and still want to, leave now or forever hold your peace. My video will still be waiting for you when you come back. 2. If you hate this movie because two women kiss each other, then please leave my channel and never come back. Your homophobic bigotry is not welcome here and you will not be missed. This movie is awful, make no mistake, but it's because of an idiotic plot, unappealing characters, and a blatant disregard for the laws of physics, as you'll all soon see. Not because there's a lesbian couple in it. That's a pathetically ridiculous thing to say. Please grow the hell up. 3. Is this movie as bad as Toy Story 4? No, it's not on par with that movie, but it may very well be worse. Now, you might think that's a bit hyperbolic, and I don't blame you. I confidently declared Toy Story 4 to be the worst piece of media I had ever seen. For me to now claim that I've managed to find something worse must obviously be just an outrageous statement meant solely to grab your attention. But here's the thing. For all the world-building rules it contradicted, for as fundamentally broken as its plot is, for as awful as its thematic messages are, and for as many characters as it abandoned or just straight up assassinated, you know what Toy Story 4 didn't do? It didn't mess with the space-time continuum and break reality entirely. Nope. I'm not kidding, but good Lord Almighty do I wish that I was. And we'll be getting into all the juicy details about that today. 4. Having said that, this will not be anywhere near as extensive and comprehensive a look into this film as my Toy Story 4 series was. Both because I've only seen this movie once at the time of writing, and therefore I'm not going to be as knowledgeable about it as I am about Toy Story 4, and because I don't have the ability to go through it scene by scene since the film is obviously still in theaters. And the only reason I was able to be as hyper-analytical with that series as I was is because I was able to scrub through the film at home, which I obviously can't do for this one yet. Though, on the topic of my Toy Story 4 series, I want to take a moment to call attention to the fact that those videos have received an absolutely unbelievable amount of attention over the past month and a half, presumably thanks to a very generous bump on the YouTube algorithm. And each part has gone from having 5K views or less to now having tens of thousands of views, all of which still maintain an overwhelmingly positive like to dislike ratio. Not that you'd be able to see that, even in spite of the new online traffic. So before we jump into the rest of this video, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everyone who gave my channel a chance and discovered me through those videos. They really were the epitome of a passion project and the result of hundreds of hours of work. So to see such a massive amount of comments expressing their love for the series, saying that they acted as a sort of catharsis for them, that I opened their eyes to just how much is broken about that film, pointing out criticisms that I missed, or even just saying that the videos gave them a laugh, I want to thank all of you for helping my channel grow so much in such a remarkably short period of time. I promise there will be plenty more analysis videos of that style in the very near future, and you can stay tuned to the end of the video to get a quick little update of what projects I'm currently in the process of cooking up, as well as being able to vote for what big series you want me to make next. But for now, let's talk about Lightyear. So as I said earlier, I won't be going through this scene by scene like I did with Toy Story 4. I may come back to do that for a second round of analysis when the film is released on Disney+, but for now we're going with a shorter video this time. That'll be moving through the major problems with Lightyear, of which there are many, as quickly as I can. We got all the greatest hits from Toy Story 4 here. Internal inconsistency, brain-dead unlikable characters, and world-building failures, with the added bonus of destroying the fabric of space-time entirely. We'll cover all that as we move through this video, and as always, you can find timestamps in the description for your viewing convenience. If you're only interested in hearing me talk about the movie as a standalone story, then you can skip to this timestamp. And if you just want to hear me talk about that plot twist, then this timestamp is your friend. But before I get to any of that, we should probably talk about a very simple question. Why does this movie even exist at all? Pixar has marketed Lightyear as the movie that inspired Andy to get the Buzz Lightyear toy in the first movie, which, as a standalone statement with no additional context, sounds like a fairly harmless statement. See, it's only when you start to think about it for 2 seconds that you realize how that literally cannot possibly be the case. See, there was this little movie called Buzz Lightyear of Star Command: The Adventure Begins, released in 2000, that has been canonically established as having been the film that inspired a line of Buzz Lightyear toys. I could end the video right here, honestly. We have a clear as day contradiction between these two movies, which makes this new one completely and utterly unnecessary, irrelevant, and inconsistent with previous releases. But, you see, the director of this movie, Angus MacLane, has a lovely little explanation for how exactly such an obvious discrepancy could have ever happened.
A lot of people seem to forget that there was already a Buzz Lightyear spinoff in the form of the animated TV show. Since you've worked with the franchise for so long, what was it like keeping that show in mind while you were also developing this film?
That show was developed when we were doing Toy Story 2, and I always imagined that it was like the Ewoks or the droids to the Star Wars universe. When they were making Return of the Jedi, they weren't thinking about droids. So that's about as much as I thought about it.
As in not at all?
Not at all.
Do you guys remember when Josh Cooley and Mark Nielsen nuked their own movie by admitting it doesn't make any sense? Well, guess what?
We're doing
a sequel.
What is it with directors and producers doing all the work for me? Do you even need me to say anything? They completely disregarded their own continuity and didn't think about it at all. Either because they deliberately chose to ignore it so they could have a reason to rake in some more Toy Story cash, or because they just straight up forgot about it due to their rampant incompetence, and I'm honestly not sure which would be worse. Especially because Angus MacLane directed the intro sequence for the Buzz Lightyear of Star Command show. This is embarrassing. I don't care whether it was a result of malice or incompetence. It's unacceptable to show this little care for the consistency and integrity of your franchise. Ah, but fear not, my friends, for our lovely director also has an explanation for this.
Because in my mind, like, that hasn't gotten produced. Like, say that exists in the universe of the Toy Story universe. That's a separate thing. There's a wall of a TV between them. So really that is meant to take place in the same timeline as Star Wars to Ewoks.
According to him, this movie and show have yet to be produced. But he also claims in a different interview that the toy was based on the cartoon show, not the movie. So you're marketing this movie on the premise that it's the film that made Andy want to get the toy, while simultaneously arguing that the toy he got actually isn't based on that movie, it's based on the cartoon, but also arguing that said cartoon has yet to be produced. I can't. This is too much. It's too much stupid. He's attempted to retroactively justify his decisions to ignore the Star Command cartoons by making up a bunch of other random garbage that only makes the situation worse and worse the more information you learn. What was that line from Mia Fey again? Lies always beget more lies. The more you try to justify this, the bigger a hole you dig for yourself. The only thing that would make this make sense is if this movie was actually released a long time before 1995, and he watched Lightyear on VHS at the same time that the cartoon show would have been airing, and then bought the toy based on that. And apparently, that's the justification that the director is trying to go with. But that just causes even more problems because this film is visually stunning. Okay, I know that sounds like a total non sequitur, but just humor me for a minute. The visuals of this movie are absolutely gorgeous. Not like that should come as a surprise to anybody. It's a modern day Pixar movie. Of course it's going to have absolutely mind-blowing graphics. Then again, but this movie's graphical fidelity actually ends up being more of a negative than a positive. The justification Angus MacLane is going with is that this movie was actually released in the late 70s or early 80s, and Pixar has also confirmed that this is supposed to be a live-action movie, not an animated movie, which is already hilarious when you consider that the humans were supposed to look like this, but whatever, let's put that aside for now. That means that what you see in Lightyear is canonically what Andy was watching when he sat down to view this film. So if that's the case, then how in the world could this movie possibly look this good? Literally how? Do you seriously expect me to believe that a movie released in that era could ever have such mind-blowingly sophisticated CGI? You don't have to look at many films from back then to quickly realize just how ridiculous that is. Like, just look at the original Star Wars, which, by the way, the director draws an explicit comparison to. According to him, these two movies were supposed to be releasing at around the same time. You are out of your mind if you think I'm gonna buy that for even a second. Also, even if you disregard the graphics, that still doesn't even hold up under scrutiny because anyone who was lucky enough to be a part of the exclusive advanced screening called the Andy Experience, you receive this little piece of concept art, which is inconsistent by itself because Andy didn't have those little green men until after the second movie, long after he got Buzz, and therefore long after he saw this movie, on top of the fact that I don't even buy that he ever would have been allowed to bring this many toys to the theater when his mom only let him bring one to Pizza Planet, but whatever. More importantly, if going to see Lightyear in the theater is referred to as the Andy Experience, and you hand out a piece of concept art at the screening showing Andy in the theater watching this movie, then obviously he didn't watch it on VHS, he would have seen it in the theater! And you want to know what makes it even worse? This movie opens with 3 blocks of text that read, in 1995, a boy named Andy got a Buzz Lightyear toy for his birthday. It was from his favorite movie. This is that movie, meaning that according to your own film, it clearly isn't the cartoon show that inspired the toy. It was supposed to be this movie because the text explicitly says that the toy he got was from this movie. That is very clearly what you had in mind when you made this movie. And the fact that you forgot about the animated series is blatant proof of that. You designed Lightyear to be the thing Andy saw in theaters as a kid. And then when people started reminding you of that thing that you were worked on that directly spits in the face of that idea, you flailed uncontrollably like a neurotic octopus to figure out a way to make it make sense, but you only ended up digging yourself a deeper hole. Because this fails on both ends of the spectrum. If this movie existed in the 70s and 80s, then the special effects are wildly unrealistic, and it's inconsistent both with how you've marketed this movie, how you clearly originally conceived of this movie based on the concept art, and the very first shot in your movie. But if this movie came out in the 90s, then that still wouldn't fix the problem, because the idea that Andy would be excited to get this toy because of this movie doesn't make any sense. He's got wings, he glows in the dark, he talks, his helmet does that whoosh thing. The Buzz Lightyear toy that Andy has is awesome, but it doesn't have any of the cool features that the suits they wear in the movie actually have. It doesn't have the cool mini lightsaber thing, it doesn't have the surrender string, it doesn't have stealth mode, it doesn't even remotely resemble this movie's portrayal of a space ranger. If I saw this movie as a kid, and then I got this toy as a birthday present, I'd probably think that my mom got me the foreign knockoff version because she hates me. Yes, technically speaking, the toy is accurate to the movie only because for the final 2 minutes, all the space rangers get upgrades to their suits that look much more like the designs we're used to with the high-pressure space wings, pulsating laser beams, etc., etc. But you never get to see them use those suits. They wear them in the final scene, and then the movie just ends. If a kid saw this movie, they'd want toys that have all the cool features they actually use. They wouldn't want this. Hence why the actual toys made for this movie that are released in our world do have those features shown up in the movie.
This is excellent. Oh, I love this.
Great. Does anybody think about anything when they make movies anymore? Am I the only one here? And this is a problem that affects the movie whether it released in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, because no matter what, if this was the movie that Andy got excited about, then there is no reason whatsoever for him to be excited about getting this knockoff toy, regardless of the time period it originated from. And if we look beyond just the Buzz toy, look at how grown adults react to having a plush Sox toy.
Whoa! I'm taking this home.
You're not getting this one back.
Is that a slightly comedic and exaggerated reaction for the sake of entertainment? Almost certainly. I'm not oblivious to that, but you can't tell me with a straight face that you don't know people who would react like this if they saw this cuddly thing. And if adults react this way, are you really gonna try to tell me that kids like Andy wouldn't have also wanted a Sox toy when our world is currently losing their minds over how Sox is the bestest thing ever? Which he's not, by the way. He actually kind of sucks, but more on that later in the video. Of course, if we go by the director's broken explanation that these toys are based on the cartoon and not the movie, thus explaining why there wouldn't be a Sox toy, and that makes even less sense, because what production company looking to make money wouldn't want to create a line of toys for this movie? Again, look at reviews of Lightyear. Look at reactions on social media. People are losing their minds over Sox. He honestly might even end up being a more popular toy than Buzz Lightyear in the Toy Story universe. And don't even get me started on how Buzz doesn't sound anything like the toy Buzz we all know and love. And for the love of sporks, please do not try to tell me that it's a different Buzz. He's allowed to have a different voice. Hey, like, what are your thoughts on the Spider-Man movies? I'd be very curious to hear what you had to say about those. Checkmate. God, this defense makes my brain hurt. It's so stupid. Okay, so, and this is coming from someone who really isn't all that big of a Spider-Man fan. The reason why that is an absolutely atrocious and disanalogous example is because Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland all exist in separate continuities from one another. At least until the multiverse falls apart and they all come together to save the day, but that's besides the point. They don't have anything to do with each other. They're all from parallel worlds. Hence, it makes sense for them to all be played by different people. But this movie is not a parallel world. It is an in-universe movie that, according to your own marketing, is what inspired the toy. I already went over how that makes no sense earlier, but let's just run with it for now, since the alternative is that the toy spawned from a show that, by the director and film's own admission, hasn't even been produced yet. So if this toy is supposed to be a piece of merchandising created specifically for this movie, then it makes absolutely no sense to have the movie version sound like this,
Buzz Lightyear mission log, stardate 3901.
and the toy version sound like this,
Buzz Lightyear mission log, stardate 4072.
especially when it's already been established in Toy Story 2 that the characters in Woody's Roundup are clearly voiced by the same people that voice the toys themselves.
Ride like the wind, Bullseye! Ride like the wind, Bullseye!
Oops, did we forget about that movie? Wouldn't be the first time now, would it? You cannot simultaneously tell me that Buzz Lightyear is a toy inspired by this movie and then proceed to have them sound, look, and act radically different from each other when Woody and the Roundup gang clearly maintain their core personality traits and voices from the show. And if your response to that is, oh my god, look at our own world, it makes sense for the toys to sound different because in our world, the actors for the movies aren't the ones to voice the toys. And you're right. They're not.
boy, am I glad to see you.
Is that you?
No, it's my brother Jim.
But if I played those two voice lines to 100 random people, do you honestly think they'd be able to confidently say that it wasn't Tom Hanks and Tim Allen lending their voices? Of course not, because they hired these things called sound-alikes to do the voices. Yes, it is not uncommon for toy makers to use other people's voices when assembling the toys, but whenever they do, they always manage to find someone who sounds similar enough so that only the keenest of ears will be able to notice a difference. But you didn't even bother to try with this. So no, the excuse of they're two different buzzes doesn't work given how this movie presents itself and how we already understand the show to toy transfer process to work in this world. And in case anybody's curious, if the roles were reversed and Chris Evans was the original Buzz Lightyear and Tim Allen had been the one they hired for this new movie, I would be saying the exact same thing. But okay, so the movie's existence in the Toy Story universe doesn't make any sense. But is it at least good as a standalone movie? If we pretend that it makes perfect sense for this film to have been made and it lines up perfectly with the original movies, does it at least function as its own story? Is it a good movie in isolation? No, it's not. It's very bad, actually. I was honestly shocked by just how terrible it is. I maintained for months that even if it was just a stupid sci-fi action movie, it would still probably be at least a 5 or a 6. But I could not have been more wrong. I was truly blown away by the moronic writing present throughout this entire film. Sadly, I won't be able to visually showcase a lot of what I'm talking about because, as I said earlier, I don't currently have access to the movie since it's still in theaters. But I do have some clips to work with, like this one, which is from the very first scene that I think serves as a really great tone setter for exactly what kind of roller coaster ride you sign yourself up for. Alisha Hawthorne brings along a rookie on their mission to inspect a new planet they landed on, and there's some dialogue that I don't even know how to describe this. Just watch for yourself.
Buzz, protocol requires we bring him along.
He's gonna have sad eyes.
Buzz.
You know I can't deal with sad eyes.
Look at the rookie, Buzz.
Nope.
Look at the Look.
No.
Lightyear.
Nope.
Look at him.
Not looking.
Look.
Nope.
Look.
No,
look,
no,
look,
no,
look
no,
at
no.
the rookie.
This is called comedy, I suppose. Yeah, it's really funny to watch Buzz act like a petulant child over a new recruit joining the team rather than being the person who is always ready to work together with any new recruits for the purpose of getting the mission done. I love it. No, really, I do. I love how Buzz is portrayed in this movie so much, but more on that later. Speaking of getting the mission done, a recurring line throughout this film is an insistence that Buzz has to finish the mission. It's said exactly like that, over and over again, and it serves as his motivation for every action he takes as he feels he is solely responsible for getting his crew marooned, which he is. And other characters reinforce that idea to him as the movie moves along, keeping him determined to defeat Zurg and get everyone back home safely. But you know what that line sounds a lot like to me?
You mind telling me what you're doing on that ship?
Sir, finishing this fight.
Except that line is only said a total of 2 times throughout the entire Halo series, and technically a third if you count this callback at the end of Halo 3.
It's finished.
It's finished.
And during each instance, it is spoken with a clear, meaningful purpose. Because that line is used so sparingly, it still holds its impact every single time. But in this movie, it is almost suffocating how many times they repeat this "we must finish the mission" mantra to the point where I was already sick of hearing it after just the first 5 minutes of the movie. It's not quite as annoying as hearing Buzz saying, "ugh," autopilot's like a broken record player throughout the first 10 minutes of the film, but it's still immensely grating. Especially when Buzz preaches about it so much during his opening speech.
This suit is a promise to the world that you, and you alone, will do one thing above all: finish the mission, no matter the cost.
Only to then immediately abandon that idea and proceed to court-martial himself for crashing the ship, completely forgetting about his insistence to finish the mission and having to be reminded about it by Alisha. And in case you think I'm off my rocker with this one, it's not the only time they take a page out of Halo's book. When Izzy goes on a spacewalk at the end of the movie, she asks Sox, "But what if I miss?" To which he says, "Don't miss." And you want to know what that sounds a lot like?
Just one question. What if you miss?
I won't.
Only it sounds infinitely less epic in just about every way imaginable, and I really wish I had that clip to show you what I'm talking about. And then they take the whole giving the Covenant back their bomb thing from Halo 2 as well, when Buzz launches himself out of Zurg's ship and ends up guiding his team's spaceship to a safe landing position, in a very similar way to how Chief flies the Covenant bomb through space. And I know that this isn't the only sci-fi franchise they've ripped things from. The massive explosion of Zurg's spaceship at the end of the movie is 1 for 1 what it looks like when the Death Star blows up. out. And I've also seen people say they've taken elements from 2001: A Space Odyssey. I wouldn't know, I haven't seen it, but considering that I can verifiably say that they've pulled things from Halo and Star Wars, and probably even more from both of them that I missed, this movie is probably chock full of elements from dozens of other well-established sci-fi universes, specifically to make you go, oh, look at that! I remembered that from the other thing. Do you remember? And it really got on my nerves after just the first few minutes of watching the movie. Though, on the subject of member-berry garbage, there's a bit of an elephant in the room in regards to the franchise that it pulled the most from. There is an absolutely unfathomable amount of fan service and nostalgia pandering from the Toy Story movies. Way more than there was in Toy Story 4, if you can believe it. It happens within the very first set of dialogue Buzz has and persists all the way to the final shot of the movie. And honestly, some of it isn't actually all that bad. For example, at the end of the film, when Buzz and his new team of Space Rangers take off for the next big adventure, the ship they're in looks like a full-scale replica of what his cardboard box looks like, just enhanced and upscaled accordingly. It's not a dramatic reveal shot, it's not in your face, there's no please clap moment, it's just a neat little detail there for people to pick up on if they pay close enough attention. But most of the time, it is blatantly obvious and shoved down your throat at every available opportunity. I would legitimately be here all day if I were to list every single instance of nostalgia pandering throughout the movie, so I'll just hit on some of the highlights. You've already heard from the trailers that
Buzz Lightyear mission log.
He constantly narrates all throughout the movie, just like he does across all three Toy Story films. Even going so far as to basically one-for-one copy the exact speech he gives about crash landing on a strange planet while getting the iconic "see the world through the helmet with a facial reflection" shot. Only they can't even do that properly because when he says,
"Terrain seems a bit unstable,"
he jumps on a single piece of the planet that wobbles slightly beneath his feet, only for every other step he takes on the planet to not even make a dent in the surface. Awesome. And what a surprise! They actually make fun of this iconic thing that Buzz did in those movies.
Our first hyperspeed test flight is a go.
Who are you talking to?
No one.
You were narrating again.
I was not. Just doing the mission log.
You do know no one ever listens to those.
I know that.
What? Making Buzz a joke in a modern Toy Story movie? Never. But to make matters worse, while making fun of the narration, they then proceed to make fun of themselves again by referencing this line.
You're mocking me, aren't you?
They proceed to have Buzz do his inspirational speech with triumphant music playing in the background akin to Toy Story 2, only they even end up making fun of that as well.
Throw your way. Will you please turn that off?
It's just too easy.
This is all just the opening scene of the movie, by the way. Hey, remember all those things you loved about Buzz in the original movies? Yeah, so hear me out. What if we reused all of them to make you feel all warm and fuzzy with nostalgia, and then proceed to systematically ridicule them all because we are intellectually superior filmmakers who are creating a movie that makes you stop and have a moment of introspection about what it really means to live life. Not like these silly cartoons about stupid toys made for children. Thanks, I hate it. And it only gets worse from there with callbacks to lines like,
I'm Buzz Lightyear. I'm always sure.
Buzz does this cool little flip from the video game in Toy Story 2. Zurg has his classic,
Prepare to die.
Buzz has his classic,
Not today, Zurg.
there's a full-on Cap list Mjolnir moment in the final battle where Buzz ejects himself out of the spaceship and equips the rocket wings. The entire final speech is basically just what Buzz tells the other toys at the beginning of the first movie when he recites his backstory off the back of the ship. Except they don't even get that right because they're setting out to investigate a mysterious signal in Sector 4 when Sector 4 is supposed to be where Buzz Lightyear is stationed up in the Gamma Quadrant.
I'm stationed up in the Gamma Quadrant of Sector 4.
And he was supposed to be en route to Sector 12.
My ship is run off course en route to Sector 12.
But whatever, maybe they'll establish new headquarters in the next movie. I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. The list just goes on and on and on. Again, there are some genuinely neat callbacks that aren't shoved in arbitrarily, but most of them are just nauseating. And they somehow managed to make To Infinity and Beyond, one of the most iconic and legendary lines in any film ever, sound lame here, which certainly isn't helped by the amount of times they overuse that line. And I guess I should also give a shout out to the soundtrack from Michael Giacchino. Not for being good, mind you, no, do not mistake my words. They completely and totally wasted his talent on this movie. His immaculate compositions for The Incredibles, Ratatouille, Up, Spider-Man Homecoming, hell, even Cars 2 had some banger tracks for as awful as that movie is. You won't find anything even remotely resembling those in this movie. The music is bland and uninspired to the point where even calling it generic seems too generous, which is a shame because we know from his other work that he is an absolute genius when it comes to film scores. The shout out I'm giving comes on the fact that, to my utter astonishment, they didn't reuse any of the tracks from the original trilogy. Not even Zurg's Planet, which I would have bet money they were going to reuse here, makes an appearance. What did surprise me, however, is that there's actually a rip from The Incredibles. Really? You decided to rip the opening theme from The Incredibles? Okay then, look, the point is that the music didn't blatantly rip things from the Toy Story trilogy like a certain other movie did, so points for that, I guess. But okay, so the movie's existence is a contradiction and it's chock full of pandering garbage. But what about the story? What about all the nitty-gritty details of the plot? Well, things aren't looking too hot with that either. You of course have the smaller things, such as Buzz pulling out his pistol for the first time having just come off the ship, yet he's only able to fire 3 shots before it runs out of ammo, so I guess he forgot to stock up before he left for some reason. A baffling lack of extra security guarding the spaceship Buzz and Sox used to escape, or the team managing to find one suit for every individual person that happens to be the exact size they needed in a storage shed. You have strings of inconvenience like Izzy throwing the gun toward Buzz and managing to miss so badly that it lands directly beneath the robot's foot as he steps on it, thus breaking it. Or strings of convenience like Morrison shooting a harpoon at the robot but misses so badly that it ends up teleporting the robot out of the way and saves the day. Just straight up weird things like the existence of a meat sandwich where instead of having meat between 2 slices of bread, you have bread between 2 slices of meat, which is just going to result in the people in the movie spreading bacteria from the meat everywhere. Things that will probably annoy only me, such as Sox knocking out a guard with a tranquilizer dart. No, you did not mishear me. More on the OP-ness of Sox later in the video. And then telling Buzz that he bought him 5 minutes.
You gave me 5 goddamn minutes.
Or this really stupid scene where Sox gets accidentally knocked off a table and there's a lengthy moment of silence where everyone thinks he died and it's played completely seriously. My eyes almost rolled out of my head in this scene, especially considering how tonally balked it is as they go from joking about how stupid normal sandwiches are, and then using Morrison accidentally bonking Sox as the catalyst to suddenly turn this into an emotional scene where everyone has to have their own little moment of reflection, which is just shoot me now. But then there are the big things. The major plot errors that shatter my immersion at best and annihilate the film's structure at worst. And I shall now go through a truncated list of the biggest problems Lightyear's plot has. In the opening scene, Alisha brings a rookie on the mission and Buzz cares about him so little that he straight up pretends he doesn't exist, and his desire to ignore him results in him getting sucked into the planet by Gravemind-style vine creatures. These things nearly suffocate Buzz to death 2 minutes later, yet the rookie is somehow able to escape these vines unscathed. We never see how. One shot shows him being pulled under, and the next time we see him, he's back on the surface completely unscathed. How did that happen? How did he escape these deadly creatures without a saber blade of his own? Also, these vines are powerful enough to almost pull their spaceship into the planet they've landed on. But as soon as we cut to the future, the vines only ever attack one by one, and they're just a complete joke. With one person being dragged off screen by the vines, presumably to his death, and nobody cares at all. It's played solely for laughs, which is concerning, to say the least. But more importantly than that is the fact that everybody on board the ship manages to somehow survive this crash, which is laughable. The ship doesn't skid against the ground, Madagascar 2 style. The angle this movie presents us has the ship barreling headfirst towards the surface, and then it somehow doesn't explode in a fiery inferno and kill many, many people. Naturally, they cut away before we actually see the crash, because obviously if they had to animate this, they'd quickly realize the catastrophic amount of casualties that it would result in. But you can't run away from what you showed us before you cut away there, movie. Then there's the issue of the hyperspeed test that Buzz is going on as a result of marooting everyone. The basic gist is that the crew needs to create a stable fuel source from crystallic fusion. Yeah, remember that line?
I need to repair my turbo boosters. Do people still use fossil fuels, or have you discovered crystallic fusion?
To be able to accelerate the big ship they call the Turnip to hyperspeed and get everyone home. But they can't prove that the fuel is viable unless they send a spaceship out to test it in action. And so Buzz volunteers himself to be the test pilot that tries to put this fuel through its paces. Except that doesn't make any sense. You clearly have autopilot technology that is capable of sending these ships on predetermined flight paths through space. So why would you not just program the ships to automatically fly through the required test path instead of risking a pilot's life to do so? And if you don't think they could rig up an AI sophisticated enough to do something like that, I will simply point you towards Sox the Cat. Yeah, I know, he's all cute and cuddly and everybody loves him, but he's also one of this movie's biggest problems. See, Sox is a therapy cat who was created by Star Command to
ease your emotional transition after your time away.
But he is far, far more than just a therapy cat, because he is not only capable of doing every technological action the plot requires from him, as you'll see shortly, but his AI is obviously incredibly advanced to be able to provide the live analysis that he does on top of being an emotional support toy. If they can make something this intelligent for a therapy cat, then they could absolutely do the same thing for an autopilot. And the problems don't stop there with these test flights. During his first big test, the fuel becomes unstable and knocks him off his projected course. As a result, pilot, he decides that the best course of action is to eject the fuel powering his ship at the exact moment it's set to explode and use the blast radius from that explosion to launch him back on course and slingshot himself home, which is just... whoa, okay. I don't think I need to explain that being directly next to your highly volatile fuel source as it's exploding is a very, very bad idea. Buzz says himself when talking about what it would take to test if the fuel source is stable that the pilot would run the risk of potentially blowing themselves into oblivion, which is not only yet another reason not to send an actual pilot, but also an acknowledgement by this movie that you should be dead right now. You are extremely lucky that pulling that little stunt didn't just blow up your own spaceship, or at the very least didn't severely damage that side of it and send you spiraling into outer space for all of eternity. And that's just the lesser of the two explosions, but more on that later. Something that seems relatively small but has really serious implications is that when Buzz finally successfully completes his test flight, a blast of confetti is unleashed into the cockpit, which is just... why? Why would you ever design a feature like that? All that's going to do is obscure the vision of the pilot, both because it'll be plastered all over the windshield and because it'll get in your face and because it's a loud, sudden, unexpected noise that could jump scare you, which isn't what you want when behind the controls of a spaceship. It's just such a bizarre choice to make, but not anywhere near as bizarre as the next big choice, which is that after Buzz gets warped into the future where Zurg's robots are on the loose and hunting down humans, we discover that all of these robots are linked to the control ship. They don't function independently. Their bodies are all powered by the massive ship up in the sky, meaning that shutting down the ship will shut down every single robot. Why? Why would you ever design something like this? It's not like the Mind Flayer from Stranger Things where all the minions are controlled by a central hive mind that's organically formed, therefore meaning that killing the brain would kill all the minions as well. These things would have to be consciously created by another human being, thus begging the question of who in their right mind would ever design it like this. Why have it so that if anything ever goes wrong on board your spaceship, your entire army immediately goes kaput? Especially if your leader is prone to emotional outbursts where he breaks the command console, as is demonstrated in this movie. You can give the robots a default AI script that roams and hunts on its own while still being able to give out orders from a command center without linking their power to it directly. This is such a glaring oversight with the design that I cannot believe somebody as far into the future as they claim these robots to have been created in, as in literally centuries after the events of this movie, would have ever thought this would be a good idea. Speaking of which, why doesn't Zurg destroying the command console have any impact whatsoever on his ability to control the robots? Oh, but that's not the only antagonistic force our heroes have to face off against. They also have to deal with bugs. They look kinda similar to Cybugs from Wreck-It Ralph, only they're far less intimidating and far less competent. Despite their overwhelming presence in the beginning of the movie, as soon as Star Command puts up an electric fence, they're suddenly incapable of figuring out what to do. They just fly right into the fence instead of, you know, flying over it. But more egregious than that is the scene in the storage shed where Morrison picks up his car keys off the table but then accidentally drops them, which just so happens to set off his car alarm, thus waking up all the bugs in the area. No, I'm not kidding, that actually happens. And so the crew finds themselves trapped in an armory with a horde of bugs in their way, but they can thankfully overcome this obstacle thanks to the inclusion of stealth mode in their suits, which is basically just active camouflage from Halo. It makes you invisible for a temporary amount of time and, I'm assuming, muffles your sound, otherwise I have no idea how these bugs don't detect them immediately. Though even then, they should probably still be dead because Buzz opens up his helmet to let Sox stand on top of his head so he doesn't obstruct Buzz's vision. But when he stands up there, he is no longer contained within the active camouflage radius, so he is visible for all the bugs to see. The bugs really don't care at all about Sox just chilling up there. You don't find it weird that there's a cat just magically floating in midair, especially since they saw that cat with these humans just moments ago. Oh wait, is the excuse that they're just supposed to be stupid bugs that can't think intelligently? Oh great, my favorite. I love it when enemies are morons for the sake of plot progression. It's honestly one of my favorite things. But this scene only gets worse from here as the plan goes horribly awry because Buzz forgot to tell his team that the active camouflage has a time limit. And don't you worry, I'll be talking about that idiocy in just a bit. So their invisibility runs out and Morrison pulls the surrender switch, which takes the place of the wing deployment button on the good suit and fully covers him in a giant pillow bodysuit that's supposed to be there in the event of a crash. Now that he's pulled it, the crew decides to roll him towards the exit to steamroll through all the bugs that stand in their way. So it sure is a good thing he decided to pull it without even knowing what it does, or else they'd all be dead. Yes, Buzz did tell him that it's the surrender string, but he didn't actually provide specifics on what that meant. But they should still probably be dead anyway, because after they roll through a group of bugs once, said bugs don't bother to get back up and chase them. They just sit idly by doing nothing. There's just a massive army of bugs just chilling on the sidelines as they roll on by instead of, you know, attacking, flying, or jumping towards them, anything. The storage shed is literally swarming with these guys. They outnumber them 1,000 to 1, and they're only only allowed to get as far as they do because the bugs behind them just blankly stare at them. Oh, but then they decide to turn around to join Buzz in the ship that they found rather than escaping, and so they roll in the complete opposite direction, back through the horde of bugs that still don't even try to stop them. Whatever direction they decide to roll in, the bugs that are behind them will always be complete idiots, no matter what, I guess. Yeah, the action scenes in this movie are really dumb as hell, in case you hadn't noticed. I mean, we're not talking AI to Somnium Files levels of, oh my god, what drugs were you on? But it's still pretty ridiculous, as is only further proven later in the movie when they're flying a spaceship to evade an army of robots, and the crazy grandma character called Darby fires a rocket launcher at point-blank range, and it doesn't blow her or the ship into oblivion.
Now that's satisfying.
What? Are you aware of what happens if you fire a rocket launcher at point-blank range?
Rockets explode!
But she isn't even remotely fazed by this turn of events. And if you want to hear about another weapon that should behave very differently to how it does in this film, Buzz uses his laser blaster, not a built-in laser blaster, just an arm attachment, to shoot at one of the robots, and it doesn't do anything, when we know from other media that exist in this universe that it should be a hell of a lot more powerful than that. And that within this media, it still manages to cause a massive explosion that the robot just runs on through without a care in the world. A single harpoon shot is capable of knocking one of these things offline, but an explosion does nothing? Okay then, whatever. But everything I just told you absolutely pales in comparison to the off-the-walls craziness that is the third act of this movie. Putting aside the major plot twist that I'll get to later, the premise is that Buzz gets abducted by Zurg after losing their fuel source to one of the robots, which is already insane, because that chain of events is only allowed to happen because the robots use these teleportation devices, which seemingly act like trip mines, and that touching them once is fine and allows you to deploy it, but once it's set in place, any contact made with it will teleport you to a predetermined location. But the movie is not consistent with how these things work at all, because sometimes it takes 2 touches to activate them, and other times, like in this action scene, robots fall into a rock or into each other that activates their teleportation devices without needing to deploy them first, which begs the question, if contact with any object a single time can activate them, then could Buzz and the team just shoot them all in the chest to teleport them back to where they came from? Like, they're clearly supposed to work in such a way that you have to touch it twice to activate it, yet there are several instances in this scene where the robots will only touch them once and still magically be teleported back onto the ship. Just so stupid. Not even mentioning the fact that the kidnapping is only allowed to occur because the ship gets knocked down, which only happens because Sox finishes installing the component that they needed to fix the ship, resulting in a reboot. So Buzz starts to tell Izzy that the ship will be ready to launch when it's done rebooting, but all she hears is ready to launch, and so tries to take off too early, thus resulting in a crash. It's stupid both that Buzz chose a horrific word choice for this moment and that Izzy acted impulsively without hearing the full sentence. And thanks to both of their idiocy, one of the robots teleports back to the ship with the fuel, and another one teleports back with Buzz, where he receives a lovely little monologue about why Zurg needs the fuel so badly, but Buzz refuses to help and so takes the capsule and runs like the wind, trying to initiate the ship's self-destruct sequence while being chased and shot at by Zurg. And while all that is going on, Izzy and the gang teleport up to Zurg's spaceship thanks to a teleportation device that one of the robots conveniently attached to their ship as a surprise tool to help them later, but the only reason why it's there is because they took approximately 6 years to push the teleportation device a second time to activate it, thus allowing enough time for Buzz to shake him off the ship. And the only reason why Izzy even knows it's there is because she ripped off her name tag, which should not be that easy to rip off considering how advanced these suits are supposed to be. You'd think that they'd just be ingrained into the armor. And upon ripping it off, the wind blows the name tag directly next to the teleportation device, and thanks to her following its movement, she sees the teleporter, which is not only an insane contrivance to get them to the final battle, but also, I don't even believe that she, or any of the other members of the team for that matter, would be able to recognize that as a teleporter given how little experience that they've had with these things. They've never gotten an up-close look at any of them. How would she even know how to use this? Whatever, so they get on board the ship and Izzy tries to make her way from where the ship lands to where Buzz is thanks to Sox's tracker, but in order to do so, she has to go on a spacewalk in a straight line from point A to point B. It's basically exactly like the airlock puzzle from Persona 5, except, and I cannot believe I'm about to say this, it actually made more sense there because they could bend the rules slightly due to it being a distorted version of reality in the form of a palace. But this film doesn't have that excuse. They are actually in outer space right now, and she has to cover a pretty significant amount of distance by spacewalking between 2 halves of the ship. And I'm sorry, but this is just not how space works. Izzy could never have possibly covered the amount of distance that they show her having to cover in this movie by floating in a straight line. She would have had to be perfectly straight in order to make this trip. If she was even the slightest bit off of her trajectory, then she would have drifted in her flight path. And if she drifted even a little bit, it would have knocked her off course and she would have missed the airlock. And even if she was a human computer and was somehow perfectly flawless with her jump, look at how far she has to travel. In the amount of time she has to cross this gap before the ship starts to rotate, she would not have even made it halfway across. Oh yeah, by the way, the ship starts to rotate because during Buzz and Zurg's little scuffle, they accidentally tilted the ship, and she ends up missing the airlock anyway, forcing her to grab onto the underside of the ship, going so far as to grab onto the very end of it and extend her reach as far as it can go to grab onto Sox to stop him from floating out. And this is one of those moments where I really wish I had access to the film, because they absolutely cheated with these shots. They have Sox float out way further in one shot, and then have him suddenly be much closer in the next so Izzy can actually grab him, which shouldn't even work anyway because she grabs something on the other side of the ship above her head that she could not have possibly known was there, meaning she either took a reach of faith and got lucky that there was something to grab onto, or took the time to stop and look for something to grab onto, and somehow Sox didn't already float away in that amount of time she spent searching for it. Either way, this doesn't make any sense at all. But then, it gets even worse, because on the other side of the ship, Buzz and Zurg are having an anti-gravity battle where they're both actively trying to shoot each other in proximity of the most volatile fuel source to have ever been invented, potentially risking blowing up the entire ship if either of their shots miss even slightly and end up hitting the capsule. Also, this battle kicked off because Buzz activated a self-destruct sequence, which Zurg chose to pause instead of stopping completely, and then Buzz is able to reactivate it by shooting the console with his laser blaster? What? Did you take a page out of the Halo show? How does shooting the command console not, destroy it? Why does that reactivate the self-destruct sequence? But then, to make matters even worse, after they set the ship to blow up and then teleport back to the ship, they still don't manage to escape in time. The ship self-destructs while they're still on board, and absolutely nothing happens to them. Let me say that again. The ship self-destructs, as in explodes in a fiery inferno, and the only thing that happens to Buzz and the crew is that they get knocked around a little before sliding out of the ship and free-falling towards Earth at dangerously high speeds. Are you guys aware of what explosions do to people? Clearly not, based on this earlier scene where he ejected the fuel from his ship, but this is a whole other level. They're literally inside a ship you set to blow up, and they escape entirely scot-free, having zero impact on the humans and the hyperspeed fuel they're carrying, which absolutely should have exploded and killed everybody, only for Buzz to fall out of the ship and crash into another spaceship, but even that isn't enough to kill him. Look, even if they weren't hurtling through space, they'd be in danger of colliding into something as big as a spaceship. But he is propelled through space after the self-destruction of the ship that is literally shown on screen to be as devastating as the Death Star explosion, and the ship that Buzz collides with is doing cartwheels through the air with how fast it's moving. Buzz is dead. There's no way. Again, I wish I had the footage to show this, but you're just gonna have to take my word for it that at the rate he's shown to tumble out of the ship, he would have been turned into a splotch of goo on the side of the spaceship the second that he hit it. And now, for the final burst of stupidity in this film. Remember earlier when I talked about the fuel explosion that should have killed Buzz? Yeah, well, another one happens at the very end of the movie, but this time to a capsule containing fuel that is mathematically proven to be capable of accelerating a spaceship to hyperspeed. Buzz shoots that capsule, which causes it to blow up when he's not really that far away from it, and once again, nothing happens to it. If you ever shot something containing that much power anywhere within your immediate vicinity, you'd be incinerated immediately. A power supply that allows you to travel into the future by reaching the speed of light should have the destructive capacity to annihilate an entire planet. It wouldn't knock you back just a little bit. The fact that this explosion not only doesn't kill Buzz, who's in the immediate vicinity, but also doesn't kill Zurg, who's basically making out with the fuel capsule, is ludicrous. Oh yeah, he survives that explosion, by the way. He survived the first Death Star explosion, and for those of you who stayed for the post-credit scene, you know that he managed to actually somehow survive the second one, Palpatine style. Buzz thinks he won by blowing up Zurg, but nope, he didn't. Post-credit scene is a shot of Zurg floating amidst the debris of his ship as his helmet lights up, indicating that he is very much still alive, acting as your sequel bait, which is a very interesting way to end your movie when Pixar has confidently claimed that there won't be any more sequels after Toy Story 4. Meanwhile, you have this post-credit scene and the director of this movie saying he thinks that there were actually 3 Lightyear movies in the Toy Story universe, so I guess we'll see what happens with that. And that's basically the plot of Lightyear. This feels kinda weird, to be honest. I'm not used to giving a rundown of a movie's idiotic problems without going through through every single scene, and especially without having the movie's footage to support it, but that's all the highlights, at least, of what makes this plot as stupid as it is. It's yet another instance of a movie where the more you think about it, the more things fall apart. The quantity of problems absolutely skyrocketed since walking out of the theater upon just sitting down to think things over, and I'm sure this video will still quickly become outdated as I think about the movie even more and discover another wave of glaring issues that I missed the first time around. But hey, maybe the plot doesn't matter to you so long as you have a good cast of characters to support it. Well, I'm sorry to say that Lightyear fails on that note as well. We'll start with the one character that the whole world seems to be falling head over heels in love with right now. Sox the Cat. Look, guys, Sox is immensely annoying. Hate to break it to you. The only reason he's here is so he can be the cute little easily marketable thing to drive up those toy sales, because who wouldn't want their own cute little Sox toy to take home and snuggle up with? And seeing people say that he steals the show is eerily similar to what I saw people saying about Forkface when Toy Story 4 came out. Everybody was losing their minds over how relatable Forkface was and how he was easily the highlight of the movie, and now the exact same thing is happening with Sox. I thought people would have learned their lesson after that fiasco, yet here we are again. It's so easy to win an audience's heart over, you have no idea. All you gotta do is make a character with big, cute eyes and give them a dry sense of humor, then make them waddle around all cute-like, and you got yourself a show stealer. Never mind if none of his jokes land and he just comes off as annoying more than anything else. Never mind if his entire existence in this movie only seeks to pose more problems about why the resources are being wasted building him instead of working on an AI to solve the fuel problem or an autopilot to steer the ship in place of a test pilot. And especially never mind if he is the ultimate plot device. Okay, maybe not the ultimate plot device, but he's definitely in second place. Whatever the plot needs him to do, he will be able to do without fail. He's able to solve the fuel crisis when none of their top scientists were able to do so over the course of the better part of a century, despite the fact that he was designed to be a therapy cat, not a calculator. It also conveniently takes him just long enough to crack the case such that it takes until right after Alisha dies. What lovely timing. He has built-in blow darts that he uses to incapacitate the guards so Buzz has the time to steal the spaceship, only he apparently only has one in reserve since he doesn't bother using any more on the other guards that rush him. Plus, who are these blow darts even designed to be used for? Putting aside the insanity of giving a therapy cat blow darts, if these things were designed to be used against the other humans, then why? Why does he have these things? There's this throwaway line where Buzz asks, wait, was that for me? In case I got out alive? But that doesn't make any sense. Got out alive? Implying they were planning to kill you? What? Why? When did that happen? They gave your therapy cat a failsafe protocol to knock you unconscious? Why did they... Huh? He's also capable of overriding security locks.
He overrode my override.
Good question. I don't have the slightest idea, but it Sox the OP Cat, everybody. Of course he can do that. He also has headlights built into his eyes. He's a walking fire extinguisher. He has a built-in laser pointer. Yeah, they gave the cat laser pointers for eyes. Brilliant. And as the cherry on top, he also has a flamethrower built into his mouth. Wow! Isn't Sox just the most broken character to have ever existed in anything ever, who can do whatever the plot needs to happen whenever it needs it? But why would you care about any of that when Sox is just the cutest little thing in the world? Oh wow, that's amazing. Too bad I don't care how cute he is if he breaks the entire story, which he does in multiple extremely significant ways. So that's one failed character. Next up, Alisha Hawthorne. Look, I'm sorry, but they do not spend anywhere near enough time with Alisha to make you care about her. They try to do the thing from Up where you essentially get Carl and Ellie's entire life story in 10 minutes, make you really empathize with them, and then rip your heart out slowly and methodically at the last possible minute. But the reason why that scene works so well is because all the attention is on their relationship. The focus in the beginning of this movie is almost entirely on Buzz and his intergalactic travels, not on Alisha as a character or her friendship with Buzz. They don't slow down to start to tug on your heartstrings until she's already dead, and the music certainly doesn't help matters at all. They play this loud, bombastic, upbeat track as Alisha keeps getting older and older and only tries to shift to a melancholic melody in the last scene where we see her final message she left behind for Buzz, a scene that isn't appropriately built up to beforehand and is immediately undercut afterwards when Captain Burnside walks into the room and says,
"The actual Buzz Lightyear in the flesh!"
It's just stop. You so desperately wanted to be up with this goodbye scene, but you're not. Stop trying. You can't skip straight to the payoff without any of the setup. That's just not how this works. And it's not like she's a horrible character or anything. She's not unlikable. She doesn't do anything evil to make you hate her, with the exception, I guess, of constantly mocking the things about Buzz that you loved about him.
It's just too easy.
But she's not some awful character. They just fail to make you empathize with her in the short amount of time that they have for the scene to have the impact that it needs to. I would talk about Morrison, but the problem is that he has no character outside of just being a more timid version of Korg from Thor Ragnarok. That's the same role he plays in this movie. Just picture Korg as a human, and that's your Morrison character. The only other noteworthy thing that I can mention about him is that he has this really stupid setup and payoff where his suit has a retractable pen that he keeps wanting to use throughout the movie, and then during the final battle, they need something small and thin to be able to jam open the emergency air brake control panel, and thus the pen has found its purpose. You might think that I should praise this for actually being something that was set up early in the movie and then paid off later, as opposed to pulling out random garbage no one could have ever possibly seen coming. And yes, you're correct in that it was appropriately set up, but there is such a thing as setting something up too much. The best payoffs are the ones that you don't predict beforehand, but when they happen, you can think back on the events of the movie and say, oh, that makes sense, I see what you did there. But the worst ones are when the second an element of the film is introduced, you can immediately and flawlessly say, oh, well, that's gonna be the thing that saves the day in the end. Is this an incredibly small thing to get hung up over in the grand scheme of things? Yes, absolutely, but you know what? It annoyed me, so into the video this little tangent went. As for the other member of the team, Darby, much like Alisha, she doesn't really do anything terribly offensive to make me hate her. She just doesn't do anything to make me like her. Her core character trait is that she
can take any three objects and make them explode.
I don't... What? That doesn't make any sense. You absolutely cannot take any three objects and make them explode. What if I give you 3 building blocks? What's gonna be your grand plan to make these 3 things explode? That's nothing but a get-out-of-writing-free card to make you accept that she can make the explosive device she does at the end of this film to blow up all the robots, but they did not put in the legwork to make that make sense because I can take any 3 objects and make them explode doesn't follow any kind of logic at all. Especially when the resources that you're using are a teleporter, bubblegum, and a bubblegum wrapper. So next up is Izzy Hawthorne, Alisha's granddaughter, and putting aside the astronomical coincidence that of all the people to get trapped outside the dome to join Buzz in his adventure, it just so happened to be her, the granddaughter of his best friend, she's by far the best character of the bunch. I'm sure that's partly due to Keke Palmer's voice performance, but she's easily the most compelling member of the team and basically the only character that I actually enjoyed watching in this film. Unfortunately, she is not without her problems, with the most glaring one being that she is afraid of space. No, you did not mishear me, let me say that again. She has looked up to her grandmother her entire life and always wanted to become a space ranger, and she's afraid of space.
We going to space? I can see stars. That is space.
What is happening right now?
She's afraid of space.
What? You can't make this up. It's not like there's a rational explanation for why she's afraid of space. Her grandmother didn't die in a horrible space accident or anything. She didn't have some traumatic experience in outer space when she was a kid. She's just afraid of space inexplicably. Most of the time when a character has a crippling phobia, there's a well-established backstory informing why that's the case. And you can even find an example of that in the Toy Story movies. But there isn't anything of the sort here, and it's just confusing. It's still nice to see her overcome that fear at the end of the movie, though knowing how this charade went last time, I have no reason to believe she'll actually maintain that victory in any potential sequels. Even if the scene itself makes 0 sense, there's at least some satisfaction in seeing a compelling character push past something that has been holding them back all those years, especially when the cinematography and sound design here is as exceptional as it is. Something else about her character that's really annoying is that she claims to have read her grandmother's books she wrote about her adventures front to back multiple times, and yet somehow doesn't know about To Infinity and Beyond.
Are you trying to get me to pull your finger?
Don't fall for it.
No, not like that. It was... Sorry, it's a thing your grandma and I used to do.
You really expect me to believe Alisha wrote entire books about her space adventures, and at no point throughout them did she make even a single mention of the catchphrase she shared with a character whom the film describes as being her best friend? Also, and this one really grinds my gears, she takes off her helmet when she meets Buzz for the first time, full-on Pablo the Penguin style, despite potentially being surrounded by hostile robots. A helmet, by the way, with a really stupid design where you can't possibly see anything out of these tiny holes. And the one that pisses me off the most is that when Buzz yells at her to grab the fuel cell they need while he distracts Zurg, she just sits around doing nothing for long enough for Zurg to grab it. And you can't use her astrophobia as an excuse because they aren't in space when this happens, they're on solid ground. And she's certainly been shown to have a very courageous fire in her heart before this point, so what was different about this time? What took her so long to get up and run for the fuel? Again, she's not the worst of the bunch, she's still overall mostly likable, she just has several crippling flaws that really really annoyed me when I was watching this movie. And now, for the grand finale, it's time for us to talk about the way Buzz Lightyear is portrayed in this movie. Or as I like to call him, Baz Lightbeer, because Pixar has butchered his character yet again with Lightyear. I don't know why the people at that studio are so determined to make Buzz into the most unlikable, arrogant, insufferable, incompetent jerk on the planet. But they did it once with a toy version, and now they're doing it again with the movie version, and I absolutely despise it.
Commander Hawthorne, you know how I feel about rookies. The same way I feel about autopilots. How may I assist you? Is there anything I can do, sir? They don't help, they just overcomplicate things. I'm better off just doing the job myself.
Look me in the eye and tell me that sounds like something Buzz Lightyear would ever say. Remember back in the first Toy Story movie when even after he thought Woody tried to terminate him, he was still willing to work together with him because they had a vested interest in returning home safely? Yeah, well, not anymore. Now he actively denies help from the rookie, saying he's better off working alone, which nearly gets him killed by the vines. That would already be enough to make me hate how Buzz is portrayed here, but it's only made worse by the fact that when they run to escape the planet, he completely forgets about the rookie until he's seconds away from dying by the vines. And even when he remembers that he exists, his reaction isn't, "Oh my god, thank goodness he's still alive, but he's still about to die. Of course I'll save you. I'm Buzz Lightyear, legendary space ranger with a vested interest in keeping my team alive at all costs." It's, "Oh my god, this stupid twit, why are you even on this mission?" And that attitude persists throughout, as later in the movie, he insists on finishing the mission to defeat Zurg all by himself while leaving the team behind, despite the fact that they just saved his life mere minutes before he decided to abandon them. There's a scene where their ship gets shot down by Zurg, and Buzz needs to take a minute to think of a new plan while the rest of the team members reminisce about their days in the academy or whatever, and he acts so unbelievingly condescending to them by telling them to just shut up and stay quiet, or to go somewhere else while he tries to think, and all I wanted to do was just knock his teeth down his throat. You know how Buzz acted when he needed some alone time in Toy Story 2?
Excuse me. A little quiet, please. Thank you.
Excuse me, please, and thank you. He is incredibly respectful to the other toys, but here all of a sudden he's become the biggest jerk on the planet. Why was Andy supposed to love this guy again? Why is anybody supposed to love him, actually? He reveals his emotionally scarring backstory halfway through the film about how when he was a rookie, he was a terrible space ranger, but Alisha saw something special in him and so he became motivated to be better. If that's the case, then why is he so rude to his rookie teammates? He was once the rookie that they are right now. He should be completely understanding of the growing pains of being a space ranger and working to help them learn the basics along the way, not yelling at them constantly and being a condescending cactus prick to them all the time. He genuinely treats his toy cat better than he treats the other humans in this movie, to the point where members of Star Command come to Buzz's room to execute Sox because they decided he doesn't need a therapy cat anymore, and Buzz has, apparently, grown so emotionally attached to him that he decides he cannot let them execute the cat and so breaks out of his room with Sox and steals the spaceship to escape and do another test flight. Gee, I wonder where I've heard that plot before. Except when this happens in Halo 4, it's a result of 4 games worth of establishing a meaningful relationship between Master Chief and Cortana so you can believe that Chief would be willing to defy a direct order to protect her. But in this movie, the only interactions we've seen him have with Sox are those of annoyance. It's the same problem this movie has with Alisha. All the screen time is focused on sending Buzz to space to test the hyperfuel, and what little amount of time is spent not doing that is all focused on Alisha. Sox is nothing but an afterthought in the first act of this movie, until he magically becomes the most important thing ever and expects you to believe that Buzz has a reason to want to protect him, in spite of how much of a jerk he's been up until this point. And it makes even less sense the other way around. The entire reason they gave him this cat in the first place was because they wanted him to have an emotional support therapy robot to be able to talk to so he can emotionally adjust to all the years he's lost. Why then did they decide that the best time to take away his therapy cat would be approximately 0.1 minutes after he discovered that his best friend died? Did they not think that it would be a good idea for him to keep his therapy cat for just a little while longer, given that he lost arguably the most important person in his life? No? Just me? Okay, well, I digress. And of course, it wouldn't be a modern-day Toy Story movie if they didn't also take a swing at Buzz's intelligence. I sure do love watching my childhood heroes that were once remarkably intelligent and clear-headed when it came to decision-making suddenly fumble around like an intoxicated flamingo. I guess we'll just start at the beginning with this one. Why would you climb up the vine alien to try to cut it off at the top to free the rookie instead of chopping it down at the base? He's gonna fall from the same same height no matter what. Climbing up just allows a tentacle extra time to swipe at you. Why would you fly the ship directly toward the mountain instead of literally anywhere else? You know how in Top Gun Maverick they provide a really detailed explanation for why they have to make such a sharp vertical incline to scale a mountain? Yeah, well, not here. He has the whole sky. He has the whole world to work with. All this open space that he just doesn't fly toward and instead picks the one direction with a massive mountain in the way to try to escape the planet. And to make matters worse, he then immediately proceeds to give up as soon as he crashes the ship and tries to court-martial himself. Hey, Lightyear. Do I need to remake part 3 of my Toy Story 4 series for this video? Buzz Lightyear doesn't give up when he makes a mistake. If he fails to accomplish his mission, he may be immediately disappointed or frustrated, but he will snap back to attention 1 second later and figure out another plan of attack. And if ever you see Buzz Lightyear give up and accept defeat, that's when you know things are incredibly serious and there really is no way out. But Buzz giving up here is like discovering a single typo in your manuscript and then deciding to throw the whole thing in the trash as a result, and it pisses me off so much. He also never ever puts his stupid helmet on, much like Pablo the Penguin. Though to be fair, no one else in this movie does either. Like, he'll be actively being shot at by a giant robot and he'll just refuse to put his helmet on. Something else he forgets to do is equip stealth mode. Remember that bug scene that I was talking about earlier? Yeah, so the person to come up with the plan to use active camouflage to escape the bugs is Izzy, not Buzz. It makes sense that Izzy would know about that function of the suits as an avid Space Ranger wannabe, but Buzz should not have had to be told about it. He should have immediately thought to use that mechanic in this scene, and he absolutely should not have forgotten to tell his teammates that the active camouflage has a timer on it. He never would have done something so stupid. Though I'd actually say this is also partially on Izzy, because if she knows about stealth mode, would she not also know about the time limit? Especially since the battle her grandmother took part in that resulted in everyone getting marooned on this planet only happened because their stealth mode timer ran out, which also doesn't even make any sense because these were their first steps they took on this planet and it already drained to 0% in a matter of seconds. So I guess I just forgot to recharge it before they left, or else the entire movie couldn't even happen. And the third act is just a cavalcade of stupid decisions Buzz makes, most of which have already gone over here, namely deciding to blow up the self-destruct control panel and destroying the fuel container in outer space. Yes, those last two decisions end up working out in his favor, but Buzz shouldn't have had any reason to assume that destroying something would cause it to start working again, nor should he have assumed that detonating a fuel source this immensely powerful wouldn't result in blowing everybody up as opposed to just knocking Zurg out of commission. Buzz is a complete moron in this movie, which, despite what Chris Evans desperately wants you to believe, is not how Buzz has ever been portrayed outside of Toy Story 4, which, needless to say, is not the shining example you should look to when it comes to characterization. It's really funny to watch him say that this Buzz is so much smarter than the one from the original Toy Story movies, when every decision he ever made in those films was completely rational, intelligent, and supported by well-founded reasoning. And if you doubt the validity of that statement, then you can check out this video after you're done with this one, while almost every decision Mr. Lightyear makes is completely senseless and stupid. Now then, there's still one more character we haven't gone over yet. I guess I should talk about Zurg, huh? Well, Zurg sucks too. First of all, just like everybody else in this movie, he's utterly incompetent. When he comes to capture Buzz, he completely ignores the other Space Rangers when he could easily kill them because he specifically wants to target Buzz. And because he doesn't kill them, they're able to come rescue Buzz in the final battle. And during that final battle, he uses his blaster gun to try to shoot at Buzz despite the fact that Buzz is holding the fuel he needs. And if even one of his shots misses slightly, he could destroy the very thing he's seeking at best and blow up his whole ship at worst. That is, assuming that fuel actually explodes like it should. And does the same thing earlier and actively shoots at Buzz's ship while flying through the air, risking the detonation of the very fuel he needs. And he just doesn't have any personality whatsoever because he's not the intimidating sub-villain from Toy Story 2. He's just a robot. An emotionless husk of a robot who doesn't have any dialogue throughout almost the whole movie and just mindlessly moves from scene to scene trying to capture Buzz and the fuel. Or, at least, that's what they want you to think. Before we go any further, I am going to signpost this next section with another spoiler tag because what I am about to tell you is so ridiculous, so absurd, so mind-bogglingly stupid that it puts every single plot and world-building problem from Toy Story 4 to absolute shame. So if you have not seen this film yet but still want to and ignore my disclaimer from earlier, take my word for it. You do not want this spoiled for you. My jaw was on the floor and my head was buried in my hands to the point where I actually thought this was all some elaborate prank by Pixar. So once again, this is your final warning. Major spoilers for this film's big plot twists lie beyond this checkpoint in the video. It's your last chance to run away before things get out of control. Still here? Okay. then let's talk about who's waiting behind that mask. At the time of production of this video, Lightyear is still in theaters, so I have no footage of this scene to prove that what I'm saying is true. But I swear to you, I am not kidding you, I am not lying to you, this actually happens in the film. When Buzz faces off against Zurg, he opens up the suit, revealing that Zurg isn't actually a robot, it's just a mech suit operated by a person. I, and probably you all as well, thought that they were going to do this scene.
You killed my father!
No, Buzz. I am your father.
Except instead of playing it for laughs as the obvious parody joke that it is, they would play it entirely seriously. I wish. I so desperately wish that's what they did, because what they do instead is that as the veil is lifted and the person controlling Zurg steps out of the suit to talk to Buzz face to face, he meets an older version of himself who traveled back in time from the very distant future. No, wait, guys, please come back. This isn't a bit. This isn't some stupid joke. Somebody actually put this in the script. I know, you had questions. I had them too. My entire theater audibly gasped and said, what? Because obviously anybody in their right mind would have been confused out of their mind at what in the world was just revealed. So let me give you the film's explanation for what the heck is going on in this movie before I explain to you how it makes no sense at all. So, when future Buzz went on his unauthorized test flight, he was immediately swarmed by Star Command, ready to be reprimanded for stealing their spaceship. Rather than going along with them, he jumped back into his ship and ended up traveling into the far future, we're talking centuries into the future, where he stumbles across an abandoned space carrier with technology that was light years ahead of where they were in his previous time period. So he dons the Zurg suit and harnesses this new technology to travel back in time to when Buzz first arrived in the future, planning to hunt him down and bring him back to the ship so he can take his fuel supply and use it to travel all the way back to before the events of this movie even happened, stop the turnip ship from landing on this planet, thus preventing them from ever being marooned in the first place, and so everybody can live happily ever after. What? What in the flying f*** did you just tell me? Are you kidding me? Who wrote this? Who would ever write this pile of excrement and call it a script? Is this real? Am I watching a Pixar film? Did you seriously just introduce time travel into this movie? Do you even need me to explain to you why this doesn't make any sense at all? The whole thing is just one massive time paradox. If future Buzz traveled back in time from the future to the present and invaded the colony so Buzz wouldn't be swarmed by Star Command and he'd be able to hunt down the fuel that he needed, then there would no longer be any reason for him to have gone to the future in the first place because he rewrote the history that forced him to time travel, which means he never should have been able to time travel back to the present. Oh my god, why did they introduce time travel? Was there seriously not a single person on the team who saw a problem with this? Were you just like, so we're all cool with breaking reality, right guys? And everyone just nodded their heads in agreement? Seriously? Also, apparently the reason why the robots all refer to future Buzz as Zurg is because they can't say Buzz. I'm not kidding, that's literally the reasoning that the film provides as to why they call future Buzz Zurg. It's easier to say Zurg than it is to say a name that's literally so simple that it's an automatopoeia for bees. But the stupidity doesn't even stop there because future Buzz is planning to fix this whole message to create another time paradox. If he goes all the way back to before he got marooned on this planet and stops them from landing there, then you have now entirely erased the events of this movie from ever happening, meaning you absolutely would have never get the chance to travel to the far future because you never would have even started doing these hyperspeed tests in the first place. So if the universe didn't already collapse in on itself, it certainly would have done so by this point. And Buzz is not this stupid. He just isn't. He wouldn't have been this stupid in the original trilogy, and according to the almighty Angus MacLean, he's supposed to be smarter in this movie. You're trying to tell me that being willing to wipe out the universe is a smart choice for Buzz to make? You've gotta be kidding me. And that's not even mentioning the mechanics behind how he was able to travel back in time at all. Buzz arrived in the distant future and just stumbled into all this technology? Really? There was just the ultimate science ship floating around in outer space for no reason at all that provided him with everything he could ever possibly need? Who made all this? Why? What was the reasoning behind creating this massive army of robots? And why did whoever built it just leave it casually lying around for anyone to find? And if technology has really advanced this significantly in the centuries that have passed, are you really telling me that nobody ever figured out how to use the crystallic fusion to create the hyperspeed capable fuel that he was looking for? And what about the sheer luck involved that of all the places in the universe for future Buzz to exit hyperspeed, he arrived directly in front of the most plot-convenient ship he ever could have possibly found? Not to mention the fact that future Buzz only travels as far back as the point in time he originally traveled travel forward to so we can get the fuel from Buzz as opposed to just traveling straight to the beginning of the movie. Ah, but you see, dear viewer, the movie calls out this problem as Buzz asks future Buzz why he needed to come to this time period, since he already would have had hyperspeed-capable fuel, and he responds by saying that he wore out the fuel testing the time travel, and wore himself out too. And that seems to imply that he had been testing the time travel for 50 years, as that's how much older future Buzz claims to be. To which I would simply ask, why in the world did it take you that long? Did you not immediately try to jump back to the beginning of the movie once you realized you had the ability to travel backwards in time? The implication is that technology has become so advanced in the centuries that have passed that he's just able to plug the fuel capsule into the ship and is immediately able to use it to travel backwards in time. Unless you mean to tell me that future Buzz spent those 50 years constructing his own time machine, in which case all I have to say is get out of here with that garbage. He's a space ranger, not an engineer. Absolutely no chance he'd ever have been able to construct something like that all on his own. It has to be something that was already possible and that all future Buzz had to do was simply add the fuel and he was set to go, so how did he wear it out? And even if you wanted to run a few tests first, it still shouldn't have taken you half a century. What were you doing f***ing around for 50 years? And even if we accepted it took literally until the fuel was all worn out for future Buzz to finally try to jump back to the beginning, he then proceeds to say that the current timeline of the movie is as far back as he could go. In which case, sweet mother of Abraham Lincoln, how unbelievably lucky is it that you had just enough fuel left to travel to the exact point in time you needed to in order to get more fuel. Sure would have been awkward if your stopping point was any sooner or any later than this specific date, or else you would be out of luck and the rest of this movie couldn't even happen at all! What an utterly moronic plot twist. And you know what? I can almost guarantee you that the reason they decided to pull this twist out of the rear ends is to subvert your expectations. Because I pose you this question. Was there even a single one of you that didn't think Zurg would be revealed to be Buzz's father? Or if you didn't think that, was there a single one of you that thought this would be the alternative they went with? I'm willing to bet there wasn't, and that is exactly my point. Everybody knows the story of Buzz and Zurg. Everybody's seen Toy Story 2. It's a great movie. You should go watch it after this video. Everybody is already familiar with the fact that Zurg is supposed to be Buzz's father. So if we just reuse that same plot point, it'd be boring. They'll be expecting that. Wouldn't it be so much cooler if we instead use those expectations to our advantage and flip the story on its head to pull the rug out from under the audience? Especially if we then play into said expectations by having Buzz say, "Dad," as Zurg's mech suit begins to open, only to then be masterfully subverted a second later. Oh my god, we're so smart. We're actually geniuses. Even though we just annihilated the consistency of our world and, in fact, created a time paradox and almost created another one, it was all worth it for the sake of subverting the audience's expectation. No! Buzz off, you stupid movie! I'm getting so sick of this stupid trope. I'm sick of writers seeing that fans are expecting a thing to happen one way in their story and then proceeding to change their story to account for the fans' expectations and end up making the story worse as a result. It happens all the time. It happened to Benny and the Egg Machine. It happened to Security Breach. It happened to a million other stories, and now it's happened to Lightyear. And it only makes the case against this movie's continuity with the Toy Story movies even worse than it already was. And the fact that a Toy Story movie breaking its own continuity both internally and when compared to the other movies it shares a universe with is not a surprise to me anymore, but is instead something to be expected, is utterly depressing and a shining example of the abysmal level of writing quality across the industry right now. Well, that was a lot to go over. So then, now that we've covered all the ground I wanted to with this movie, overall, do I hate Lightyear as much as I hate Toy Story 4? No, of course not. That movie assassinated my all-time favorite characters from anything ever. There was no way Lightyear was ever going to piss me off as much as that film did. But as for the question of whether or not it's a worse film, it's hard to say. On the one hand, every single scene in Toy Story 4, and I do mean every single scene, either fails to function on the most basic level of logic or functions strictly due to an unbelievable amount of contrivance. Not every scene is broken in Lightyear. There are things that follow logically, and you can understand the progression of events. And the things that don't make sense are usually to somewhat of a lesser degree, comparatively speaking. On the other hand, Toy Story 4 doesn't create a time paradox that should have resulted in the entire movie getting sucked into a black hole. As much of a cop-out as it is, I really don't think that I can make the call on this just yet. I might have a better answer for you when the film comes out on Disney Plus and I can go through the film scene by scene to see just how broken the film could be. But until then, having only seen it once, my answer is that Toy Story 4 has a less functional plot than Lightyear and assassinates more characters. But Lightyear's existence as a film is already a contradiction, and it goes so far as to literally break reality just to subvert your expectations. So so I think it's at least as bad as Toy Story 4, it's just that they're two different kinds of bad, but who knows? Maybe I'll watch this movie again later this year and discover that it's actually worthy of another How Toy Story 4 Destroyed Everything treatment. Certainly wouldn't be the first time I realized a Pixar movie was much, much worse than I thought the first time. And for everyone watching that has also seen this film, which I imagine is like 3 of you, let me know what you thought about it. Were you as pissed off at Buzz's portrayal as I was? Did you notice the glaring problems with this movie's physics and logical consistency? And did you find the nostalgic callbacks to the original movies and other better pieces of entertainment charming or annoying? I'm very curious to see what the general reception to this movie is going to be, because after Toy Story 4, I find myself wondering just how low a movie has to sink before people start to pay attention to what they're watching. I would hope that the fabric of reality breaking apart at the seams would be enough to accomplish that task, but who knows at this point. Given the lengths that some people are willing to go to in order to defend any pile of garbage Pixar churns out no matter what, I sometimes find myself wondering if there even is such a breaking point a screenwriter could reach that would finally make audiences go, okay, maybe you've gone too far this time. But if ever there was a movie to find that breaking point, Lightyear may very well have been the one to do it. Or maybe you just got review bombed, in which case, one final reminder that if your outrage over this movie is because of this scene, I don't want you around my channel. Please leave. So long, farewell, you won't be missed. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed my, quick little review of Lightyear. I know it's nowhere near as in-depth as my Toy Story 4 series. Any attempt I would have made to try to match the quality of, or even one-up those videos would have just fallen flat on its face, but hopefully you still found this video insightful to some degree. But if you're itching for another large-scale comprehensive analysis series, then allow me to direct your attention to Danganronpa 3, The End of My Sanity, a riff on the show's actual name, The End of Hope's Peak High School. That was actually my first proper breakdown series of this scope, and the experience that I gained from making it is what helped me make my Toy Story 4 videos as refined as they are. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you go check it out. I'm still pretty proud of those videos given the time constraint under which I made them. Just be warned that it covers far more graphic and mature content than Toy Story 4, and as such, my profanity levels are unfiltered, to say the least. Perhaps excessively so. And if you feel so compelled, you may also want to check out my Danganronpa 2.5 breakdown, which serves as a sort of prologue to my Danganronpa 3 videos. Of course, if you have no interest in a show like that and are looking for something a little more mainstream to watch me sink my teeth into, then my Free Guy video may be right up your alley. This was really just a one-off. I didn't go into this movie expecting to even cover it on the channel at all. It just really ended up pissing me off because of how horribly it misrepresenting video game culture as a whole, despite it being heralded by many as the best video game movie ever made that really understands games. Needless to say, such unanimous praise rattled me just a little bit, and I took to my writing and editing to give this film the shredding it deserves. Speaking of video games, if you're willing to dip into the world of game analysis, then I have plenty of videos of that style to go around as well. First up is a short series I did where I went over the top 20 worst and top 20 best games I had ever played. And while the former list is somewhat outdated given recent things I've played, it's still a mostly accurate summation of the games that I had the most extreme reactions to, be them positive or negative. If you're looking for games to stay away from at all costs or looking for cool new games to play, I think you'll find those videos interesting. And if you're willing to hear me talk for an hour about something I love unapologetically, then I highly recommend my Dragon's Lair 3D video to you all. I still confidently maintain that it is the best video I have ever made on this channel, serving as a love letter to my favorite game of all time, and trying my best to give such an underrated masterpiece the attention and analytical praise that it deserves. Even if you've never heard of this game before, be sure to give it a watch and see if I can make you even slightly interested in checking it out within the hour. I promise, if you decide to play the game after watching, you will not regret it. Now, if nothing I just said interests you even a little bit, you might be pleased to find out that I actually have some additional Toy Story content available for you to watch. First up is the, totally serious and not at all satirical video released on April 1st of this year talking about just how amazing of a movie Toy Story 4 is. I'm pretty happy with how that video turned out considering just how much of a joke it is, so if you've seen my other Toy Story 4 videos, I think you'll really enjoy that. Also, I do Let's Plays. The two big games coming up that I'm going to be covering are the sequel to AI The Somnium Files and Sonic Origins. You are of course under no obligation to watch those, but just know that I will be providing supplementary LP content in the spaces between my analysis videos. I would always encourage you to check them out, but if not your thing, that's totally fine. Though if you are interested, may I direct your attention to my series on the Toy Story 3 video game? I find that interesting. And of course, as promised at the beginning of the video, before I sign off for today, I want to give you a quick little update on what else I'm currently working on in the world of movie breakdowns. First up, I've noticed some people recently asking for what my list of top 20 best and worst movies would look like. And since I made a pair of videos going over my best and worst games of all time, I am more than happy to do the same for movies. Especially since, while there will be some very obvious placements on both lists that anybody could have guessed a million miles away, I definitely have plenty of surprises to throw your way for both the best and the worst. So if you're excited to hear about what I consider to be the peak and rock bottom of films, you can look forward to that duology sometime next month. A more long-term project that I'm in the process of working on is my decimation of the recently released Halo TV adaptation, which took just about everything meaningful about the games and books and set it all on fire without a care in the world. And for anyone new to the channel who doesn't already know, Halo is my favorite video game series of all time, and seeing it get disrespected to this extent is almost as maddening as what happened with Toy Story 4. But I say it's more of a long-term project because the show consists of 9 hour-long episodes, and at the rate at which I break things down scene by scene, I've started to realize that it's likely going to be quite a while before that gets finished. But the goal is to get my series done before Season 2 comes out. Hopefully I can at least do that, right? So in the meantime, I'm going to be working on another project, but I haven't quite decided on what it's going to be yet. Instead, I want to hear from you guys. I currently have 4 videos that I've been wrestling between in terms of what I want to start working on next. The first option would actually be a praise video where I break down Toy Story 3 and go over why that movie is just so incredible and how it serves as the perfect capstone to the series as opposed to the nightmare conclusion they actually went with. Though I acknowledge that I've already gone over many of what makes Toy Story 3 so amazing in my Toy Story 4 series already, and that there may be a greater interest in seeing me talk about things that I hate, so other stuff that I'm considering making is a video series in the same style as how Toy Story 4 destroyed everything, but this time for Incredibles 2. And I'm also thinking about making one for Ralph Breaks the Internet, because those were 2 movies that I had always been much softer on than Toy Story 4, maintaining the position that even though they weren't as strong as the originals, they were still overall decent films, but that position has gradually declined as the years have gone on, and upon recently rewatching both movies back to back with their predecessors, which was only pain, never ever do that, I've come to realize that while they're nowhere near as broken as Toy Story 4, there is still a treasure trove of stupid writing and character assassination to go over in those films. Finally, there's the topic of Disney live-action remakes. While many of them have already been thoroughly torn to shreds by other YouTubers, and there would be little point in me offering my 2 cents on the matter, there's one in particular that people generally seem to think is actually not that bad, and is perhaps even somewhat good, Aladdin. But I actually despise this film with a fiery passion, not only because it's a merciless butchering of such a classic Disney adventure story, but also because it fails to stand on its own 2 feet as a standalone story irrelevant of the existence of the original. And I've been looking for an excuse to make my displeasure known since it came out over 3 years ago. And there you have it, a glimpse at upcoming analysis projects you can look forward to on the channel. To clarify, I do plan on making all of these eventually because I have heaps to say about all of them. I just kind of want to get a feel for which one you guys are looking forward to seeing the most so I can prioritize my projects. So be sure to go to the straw poll link in the description below to vote for the one you want to see next. Of course, if you have other ideas for videos that you want me to make, be sure to leave them in the comments below and I'll consider them for the future. And one last thing before I sign off. I actually have a Discord server. I launched it a few months ago back in February and have been thoroughly pleased with the results. Getting to interact with people on a far more regular basis about a variety of topics, play games with fans as a community, and occasionally host movie nights, albeit I admittedly rarely partake in them, has been a blast. If you're looking for a central hub to chat with other members of the community, you can find a link to my Discord in the description below. Hope to see you there. Other than that, I'd like to once again thank you all for watching. I hope to see you all soon for whatever you decide to watch next. Goodbye!